Call of Duty's live service model is having some big issues. That's the name of this video. It is another exclusive Ace video. I'll go ahead and have the original video down in the link in the description. But if you are new here, if you've never been here before, it's your boy, the myth, the legend, the man with 3,000 hands, aka Ugly Boy 3000. Go ahead and hit that sub button, turn on the post notifications so you never miss a video, and drop a like. It puts us into the algorithm and it gets us one step closer to taking over the world. Exclusive Ace.
What's up, guys? My name is Ace, and today I want to focus on Call of Duty's live service model, especially with Black Ops 6 based on what we've seen so far, and why I feel they're not even close to reaching their potential with this model. Now, many of the things I discussed today, I have already mentioned.
Definitely not. Let me butt in here real quick, because this is a 13-minute long video. I normally wouldn't watch a 13-minute long video, but we're doing this first, so I'm gonna turn it into maybe like a 15-minute to 18-minute long video if I keep on talking. So I gotta keep it short and sweet. Black Ops 6 has definitely not met its full potential. The game previous and the game previous to that has definitely not met its full potential. They keep on messing up the game on purpose just so they can release another game and make more money off you and profit off you more. With that being said, I'm not going to get too into it. Let's get to the video.
Mentioned in the past with my more general feedback videos, which I will leave some of the more recent ones linked in the description down below. But today, I wanted to dive even deeper into my thoughts and feedback when it comes to their live service model and where I feel they're going wrong with this. Now, I do want to point out, I totally understand that there are a ton of moving parts, and many, if not most of the things that I outlined today, it's so much easier said than done, and some of it might even be really obvious. But at the same time, I think there is a lot to be desired here. There's a lot of room for improvement. And I think especially recently with Black Ops 6, we've been seeing the results, at least in part, of this live service model not living up to its potential. So let's dive in with the first part of this topic, and that is consistency. Especially consistency with updates and the content release schedule.
They're never going to be consistent. They're never going to tell you like what's going on, because they want to leave you in this vicious cycle of the Call of Duty community. You know what I'm saying? If you know, then you know.
In my eyes, and based on my experience with the live service model with Call of Duty over the past several years, it seems the ideal seasonal schedule is every 8 weeks we have a new season. And a big reason I feel this is ideal is this means every 4 weeks we're getting a fairly large update, because obviously you have your big update at the start of a season, and then midway through, or 4 weeks through, you would have your reloaded update. And to me, that feels very reasonable for a wait time between major updates. Waiting any longer than 1 out of the 12 months that you get out of a AAA live service game's realistic life cycle in order to get a major update, it just feels too long. And that's what we're currently experiencing right now, coming off of the holiday season. And we have been seeing this same cycle repeat itself every single year, where at the beginning of January, it seems they've just lost all their momentum. A bunch of people are just fed up with the issues that have been persisting for several weeks without any changes, since the developers are largely on holiday. And many of us are also feeling very starved for content at this point. Like, I can't believe we still have to wait another almost 2 weeks before we get the next update, when it's been 6 weeks since the Season 1 Reloaded update came, the last major content update for the game.
It's giving me a little bit of time to camo grind.
We're already overdue for this update, and yet we're still going to be waiting a couple more weeks. And it's really unfortunate to see this trend happen basically every year with Call of Duty, because the game is still fairly new and fresh, especially for something that's going to be treated as a live service for the next year, and yet they lose so much momentum over the holiday season, largely because of this major lull and lack of any update or hope for improvement for a
I would say they should push it back from the holiday, but conspiracy theorists, you know what I'm saying? It's not a conspiracy because it's facts. They do it on purpose because they're selling the cheats to the people, and then they end up patching it, and then they could sell more cheats because they say, hey, these cheats don't work. Now you got to buy some more cheats.
A while, and that causes a lot of people to leave, and unfortunately, many of those people will never come back to the game. They're not going to recover that momentum that they lost. Now, unfortunately, I don't know what the solution to this issue is, because I do feel the devs obviously deserve a holiday, especially after a big crunch leading up to a big game launch that they've been working on. My understanding is they deserve no holidays. Overtime. There's a lot of pressure leading up to that. No days off, bro. And so I don't think the ideal solution here is make them continue working a ton of overtime. Don't give them a holiday break or anything. Because I want updates in the video game that I'm playing. But I can't help but think that they're missing out on so much retention over the year because of this huge drop in momentum. And there's got to be some sort of solution or some things that they can do to at least minimize that loss of momentum and keep people at least somewhat engaged and content throughout this annual holiday lull that we get. And on a somewhat similar note here, when we're talking about consistency with a live service model, something I have brought up in the past, but I feel fits really nicely here as well, so I'm going to repeat myself. I would like to see a much more standardized approach to the content quantity on a seasonal basis, especially when it comes to map content, since in my eyes, that's the main content that's
Let's see
actually
what
going to
you got to
provide a
say,
whole lot of
exclusive.
replayability.
Let's
Like,
hear
sure,
it.
adding new guns is great, but once you max that gun out, it just sort of blends in with the rest, whereas map content, that really fills out the experience as a whole. And while we don't know exactly what the plans are going forward with Black Ops 6, since we don't even have the Season 2 roadmap yet, I suspect we'll be seeing that.
Hey, down in the comments, what do you give the maps that it started with, like Black Ops 6? What do you, out of a scale from 1 to 10, what are you giving all the maps, like, bundled in together? What are you giving them all? I'm going to give it a 6 or a 7, because there is, like, 2 maps that I like, but out of all the maps, only 2 maps, bro? Like, some of them are okay, but I'm saying I actually enjoy. There's only like 2 of them.
Sometime, maybe later in the week, this upcoming week. But in the past, we've seen a lot of inconsistency with this, and that can cause some frustration with the live service model as well. Now, for me, from the perspective of a 6v6 player, ideally, I like to see 4 6v6 maps
or
every
10v10
season.
is cool too.
And I like the ratio of 3 brand new maps mixed in with 1 remaster every single season. That just seems like the sweet spot number where I feel it's reasonable to expect that quantity, and it provides enough hype and excitement and replayability for that given season. And unfortunately, in the past, while many seasons would give us that amount of content, or sometimes even more, there's been a lot of inconsistency where other seasons fall way short of that number. And when you have a major update that falls short of expectations that have been set by other major updates, that's another thing that can harm momentum with a live service model. And momentum is very important because as people drop off and lose interest in the game, it can be hard to bring many of them back. So in this case, I think having consistent expectations from one season to the next, that's also a big positive with a live service model, and it's something that Call of Duty hasn't done a great job with over the years. As for the next part of this topic, let's talk about the events, because this is an area where I feel Black Ops 6 in particular so far has really fallen short, especially compared to last year, Year 3. And the biggest issue I've had with the events in Black Ops 6 so far is they're almost always just about earning a bunch of XP or picking up dropped items from players. Basically just play the game and you will complete the event. And I'm really not a fan of this because it just feels redundant. It doesn't add anything to the experience that you're already playing, since that's what you're already doing, is earning XP to level up your character.
They had one good holiday game mode, and that was on multiplayer, and that was the Christmas where you got to take the cookies. That's like the only good game mode they had. So normally they have better holiday game modes, and they need to stick to that. All the special events, you need to have great game modes.
And putting time into the game to level up your battle pass. So making it so that's all you have to do for your event as well doesn't really add any extra engagement to the system. You're just doing the same thing you were doing previously, but now you're getting some rewards along the way. In my eyes, these in-game events should add a layer on top of just playing the game.
Like
and this can be done easily by featuring unique challenges that may push people outside of their comfort zone a little bit. Force them to use a little bit more variety, try out some things that they maybe otherwise wouldn't be using. Now, I'm not saying these challenges should be particularly difficult, since I do feel events should be easily completed by anybody playing the game, regardless of your skill level, as long as you're willing to put the time in. But having at least some form of in-game challenges, something where you have to maybe change up what you're doing while playing the game, that makes events much more engaging, and it gives you an extra reason to want to log in and play the game outside of just, let's earn some XP and play the game the same way I always play the game. And I think we've already seen some big missed opportunities here with the events in Black Ops 6, like with the Squid Game event, for example. They introduced some really interesting and unique game modes that are specifically tied to the event, and how much more interesting would it have been to tie at least some of the rewards for this event to challenges that can only be completed within those game modes. Again, I'm not saying they have to be particularly difficult challenges or challenges that require tons of grinding or anything, but even just some challenges to get you to try these interesting, unique modes out for a handful of games. That would have been so much more interesting and engaging than what they did do, which is play the game, you don't have to change up anything that you're doing, and you'll get the rewards. As for the next thing on my list, this is something where I just feel like they took a big step back from the previous game, which is Modern Warfare 3, when it comes to the live service, and this is the lack of an aftermarket parts style system. Now, for those that aren't familiar, maybe you didn't play Modern Warfare 3, with this aftermarket parts system, with every single week throughout Modern Warfare 3's lifecycle, every Wednesday, you would get a new set of weekly challenges. And most of the time with these weekly challenges, if you completed a number of them, you would get that week's aftermarket part. And aftermarket parts were sometimes an attachment that was really unique, like an underbarrel flamethrower, for instance,
and
or
some
maybe
of them were
a
good.
Stock that could be used on a good handful
like
of weapons.
One or two that were really trash,
significantly faster.
But
more often than not, aftermarket
most
parts
of them were
were like a weapon mod. It's something that would convert an existing gun into the game into something that played totally different. It played like a brand new gun in most cases. Kind of like the 3-round burst mods we've seen in Black Ops 6 for the XM4 and the Compact 92, but often they would make them even more unique than what they did there, and they would also have a different look to them, although I don't think that part's even necessary. The main thing about this is every single week of Modern Warfare 3, I would look forward to Wednesdays, because at least in most weeks, there was something new to grind for that was an actual gameplay item, something you could try out that would actually affect the gameplay in some way. It wasn't just some cosmetic item most of the time. Some weeks there were some filler items like that. But this system, in my eyes at least, is what really started to make Call of Duty feel like it was being treated as a game as a service. And it was so great that as a Call of Duty player, every Wednesday I had something to look forward to in the game. That's what a live service model should be doing. It should be giving you things consistently to look forward to in the game that you're playing to keep you coming back week after week. And in my eyes, that's a huge win-win. They obviously want to maintain player retention as much as possible. They want to keep that momentum going. They want people playing their game
as cooking in the background in the gameplay. The homie's cooking.
Year, because the more people that are playing throughout the year, the more bundles they're going to sell. So I was very disappointed to find that Black Ops 6 doesn't have this system, at least currently. And I do think this was a huge step back when it comes to the live service model. In fact, this is one of the things where over the holiday lull, if we would have had a new aftermarket part or a new weapon mod every week, or even every couple of weeks for completing weekly challenges,
it wouldn't matter because there's still cheaters in the game.
Held us over throughout that lull. But obviously there was nothing like that, and therefore there hasn't really been anything to look forward to within the game itself, aside from just the gameplay experience in general, which for some is enough, but for many, it's not. And this just leaves us with one last general topic I wanted to attach to the end of this video, and this is yet again something I have mentioned in the past, but this is a lack of continuity, especially with universally loved features from one Call of Duty game to the next.
Yes.
And one really easy example that we're kind of living through right now is in Modern Warfare 3, partway through the life cycle, they brought in challenge tracking, which allowed us to select various challenges that we wanted to track. And then when we were actually in a game, we could open up our start menu and see what our progress was on those track challenges. That's a feature that was universally loved. I can't think of anybody that was upset that that feature was added to the game. And yet when Black Ops 6 launched, that feature wasn't there. We now know that with Season 2, they are bringing this challenge tracking feature to the game, which is excellent. I'm glad they're finally bringing it. Better late than never.
But they took it out on purpose just to say that they could add something in.
Like it took some steps forward in some areas, but then steps back in other areas like this. Now, it's also a similar story with some gameplay-related fixes or adjustments as well. So things like the idle sway improvements that Sledgehammer made last year with Modern Warfare 3, and the visual recoil improvements they made as well. That's something that was also generally universally loved by the community. Maybe there's the odd person here or there that would push back against that. But generally, it seemed that was very well received, and yet at launch of Black Ops 6, it once again felt like we took some steps back there, and then several updates later, they ended up fixing those areas and bringing them back in line to what we had in Modern Warfare 3. And when it comes to that live service model, especially when you're trying to keep up that momentum over time, when you go from one game to the next and you're taking some clear steps backwards, that can obviously lead to some frustration. And I don't know exactly what the proper solution to this is, since I know each dev studio, they're making their own game. Especially in this case, while Modern Warfare 3 was adding these things partway through its life cycle last year, Treyarch was probably just so focused on getting their game together and finished for the upcoming year that they were probably unable to monitor all of the things that Sledgehammer was doing and how well those things were being received. Or maybe they were monitoring those things, but they've already got their long list of things that they're currently working on to get their game together, and they just simply didn't have time in their schedule to implement those things into their game before the launch of the game, which is why we're now just starting to see challenge tracking coming with Season 2. So I understand the reasons that this may be taking place.
Give them a little bit more time then, dog. Every 2 years they should release a Call of Duty, not every year.
It's still frustrating when you go from one Call of Duty game
to
the next
to the original game plan, y'all.
And suddenly you're missing features that you loved from the previous one that aren't like stylistic choices or gameplay philosophy choices or anything either. These are just features that people love and have now come to expect with the franchise, and it feels like they've been taken away from you when you move on to the next game. And honestly, I think this is one of the reasons we see a lot of people pushing for no more annual releases in Call of Duty, and instead just having one Call of Duty game that continually
not even
gets
one Call of Duty game
year after year after year.
It could be
because at least then, if you go
every
that
3
route,
years,
you would
every
see
2 years
over time. You wouldn't be losing features suddenly. And so I can definitely see why people are making that push. Now, just as an aside, I personally still like annual releases with Call of Duty in general, because I enjoy the excitement of a new but very familiar experience, setting, and gameplay design approach with every Call of Duty every single year. I like learning the new game. I like having a new map set. I like having a new perk system in many cases as well to learn, a new set of weapons starting from scratch. I like that about Call of Duty's annual releases, but I don't like when we see clear steps backwards from where we just left off with the most recent game. And there we go. That's going to wrap it up for all of my thoughts on this topic. Just a bunch of areas where I feel they are falling short and have been falling short in many cases for years now with Call of Duty. And I really think if they can make some very notable improvements to many of these areas, it would help them maintain momentum throughout the year. Although, of course, I'm not claiming that this is everything. And the whole reason they lose momentum, like in the case of Black Ops 6, for instance, the game itself has its own unique issues that have nothing to do with anything I talked about today. But changes and improvements to how they're handling the live service model, I think would go a really long way when it comes to retention over the year, regardless of the individual issues that the game has. Now, of course, these are all just my opinions, and I'd love to hear from you guys in those comments
I need to know your opinions too.
When specifically referring to how they're handling live service in Call of Duty, are you generally happy with the live service approach they're taking, or
Make sure you go hit that sub button on his channel too.
For improvement. If you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.